As the spear thrust forward, a swath of ice blue radiance pierced through the air, conjuring a flurry of ice crystals and snowflakes. The ground beneath them was encased in a layer of frost. Lu Sheng felt as if his mind had been brutally chiseled with a cold, sharp ice spike. He was suddenly engulfed in a daze, followed by piercing, bone-chilling pain. Struggling to support himself, Lu Sheng knelt on the ground, his mouth and nose bleeding profusely, the blood dripping onto the frost-covered ground before him. His hand and fingers felt numb. He looked at his hands to see them also encased in a layer of frost. Despite his dire situation, Lu Sheng managed a wry smile. His face, covered in frost and blood, he looked down and defeated, yet he was glad that had finally witnessed the true power of the Grandmaster. His indomitable wheel of blades was shattered by the female Grandmaster's spear. He took his final look at the female Grandmaster, and the tip of her spear, calmly awaiting his end. The female Grandmaster, however, was motionless, and stood before him with her long spear raised. There was a moment of serene calm between them. But just as he braced for the female Grandmaster's final blow, to his surprise, her mask cracked with a crisp sound, and then shattered, revealing a pair of crystal blue eyes. Startled, Lu Sheng looked up. The female Grandmaster, still standing before him, looked at him straight in the eyes, almost as if smiling at him, and soon, her figure dissolving swiftly into the mist. Then, memories, more powerful and intense than any Lu Sheng had absorbed before, surged toward him like a colossal python, fiercely penetrating into his body. Soon, he saw a young and timid little girl was led into the room, and introduced by the man beside her. Her name is Zhao Lingxuan. After the brief introduction, an elderly man, his back to the girl, set down his ice-carving tools and nodded in approval, remarking on the little girl's promising potential. His own eyes, a beautiful shade of blue, turned to tell the girl that from today, she would be his disciple in the glacial martial arts. In the next scene, the young girl, dressed in a thin layer of clothing, shivered violently under a waterfall made of ice, her body slowly turning purple from the cold. Ice frost formed on her face, legs, and feet, strangely contrasting the warm, spring-like environment just a few meters outside the waterfall. The old man nodded in satisfaction. He asked the young girl what she wanted to learn. Trembling, the girl earnestly replied, "Spear." When asked why, she looked up at him with determination in her eyes and said she wanted to learn his spear technique, as the old man was the strongest spear martial artist in base 1359, the only one who had mastered the fifth realm of spear techniques. The old man was momentarily shocked, then burst into laughter, and lifted the girl and carried her on his back as they returned to base 1359. In the next scene, the girl has grown up. Now 17 years old, she stood on a platform, holding her long spear, watching the cheering crowd below. Today, she had become a 7th level Grandmaster. The crowd praised her and celebrated another Grandmaster prodigy at base 1359, many believing she could reach the 10th level in her lifetime. She then looked towards the old man, who smiled but shook his head, saying she still had a long way to go. Turning away, he walked off, remarking softly that her weapon, the cold spirit sparrow, had yet to explore the true glacial. The girl remained silent, gripping her spear even tighter. In the next scene, a large door burst open. The girl opened her eyes, and a man covered in wounds and blood stumbled in, leaning against the doorframe with a bitter smile. He looked at the girl, then shook his head and told her that the base had fallen. He mockingly asked if her heart and blood were made of ice, given that she was still diligently training even though their base city had fallen. The girl's face showed a rare, shocking expression. She couldn't believe the base had been breached. She immediately asked about her teacher. The man shook his head, saying their teacher had died, his smile turning desperate and scornful. He revealed that their teacher's last words were telling them to not disturb her training. The girl's expression returned calm, picked up her spear, and walked out. She put on her mask, resigned to her fate, saying since her teacher was dead, she would join him. With a flash of ice-blue light, she charged towards the powerful beasts, lamenting that her cold spirit sparrow had just explored the true power of glacial, but she would never have a chance to show it to her teacher anymore. The memory ended. Lu Sheng's head throbbed with pain, accompanied by an intense coldness. He screamed in agony, drenched in cold sweat. After successfully absorbing all the memories, Lu Sheng took a few deep breaths. This was the clearest and most complete memory he had ever witnessed. He had never absorbed such pure memories before. Apart from a few images, the majority of the memories were related to spear techniques and martial arts. These memories, experiences, and martial knowledge surged into Lu Sheng, elevating his proficiency in spear techniques to an unprecedented level. Absorbing these memories, his spear technique had surpassed the control realm, reaching a brand new realm, the fourth realm. Although he was unfamiliar with the concept of the fourth realm, the memories revealed that the female Grandmaster's spear technique had achieved this level, and her teacher was a master of the fifth realm. Reflecting on the female Grandmaster's memories, Lu Sheng realized the immense impact they had on him. His mediocre spear techniques were now elevated to the fourth realm, becoming his most powerful martial art to date. The purity of her memories was unparalleled. Even among Grandmasters there are disparities. If the memories of Shi Shengning, the creator of his Grandmaster technique of 10 suns in the sky, were like a muddy ball filled with impurities, it was riddled with entanglements and distractions, while the female Grandmaster's memories were like transparent ice crystals. Within the female Grandmaster's world, she revolved around one thing only, the spear, and nothing else. Although she only reached the 7th level Grandmaster in her lifetime, she was an outstanding prodigy in the history of martial arts, capable of challenging and defeating those at the 8th level. Having fully absorbed the female Grandmaster's memories, Lu Sheng didn't stop, but continued to search for the most important thing. He had previously discovered the Grandmaster technique in Shi Shengning's memories, and wondered if he could find something similar in the female Grandmaster's memories. Finally he found it. A shining ice sphere. This was none other than the core of the Grandmaster's techniques and her Grandmaster's will, the ice sphere emitting a faint blue light. Without hesitation, Lu Sheng reached out to absorb it. As the ice crystal shattered, a wave of blue light, like a vast glacier, burst into his mind. He seemed to hear a clear chirp. Opening his eyes, he recalled the Grandmaster's last spear thrust. A phantom of the female Grandmaster appeared behind him, and slowly he absorbed her Grandmaster's will. At the same time, he had learned a new Grandmaster-level technique. He picked up the long spear as if returning to the female Grandmaster's last thrust. Amid the vast glacier, an ice phoenix swiftly flew out. The ice phoenix's wings were like halberds, spreading out like a flap, more powerful than anything he had seen, freezing enemies hundreds of meters ahead. This Grandmaster spear technique was called Glacial Halberd Phoenix Strike, a spear technique capable of slaying a great Grandmaster. Lu Sheng found a place to sit, and began checking the information about the female Grandmaster and her teacher in the Fire Team resources. Her teacher was a 10th level martial artist, the creator of the Glacial Halberd Phoenix Strikes, who perished during the destruction of base 1359. The girl, a 7th level martial artist, also fell in battle. Lu Sheng was surprised to find that the old man was a 10th level martial artist, and even more surprised to see that such formidable martial arts techniques were not included in the Fire Seed program. He wondered how powerful spear techniques in the Fire Seed program be. His excitement quickly faded as he reconsidered. He was already practicing 3 11th level martial arts techniques. To be fair, Lu Sheng's martial talent wasn't an innate prodigy. It was only through the accumulation of 10,000 years of human martial arts knowledge and experiences that he reached his current height. The Dream Realm was an immense treasure for him, where he could obtain these powerful techniques. However, the fundamentals of these techniques needed to be learned step by step, and he couldn't master everything all at once. However, there was a shortcut. What he needed was to continue defeating the powerful martial artists in his Dream Realm, which he then could perfectly inherit their techniques. This was the best solution Lu Sheng could think of. And his next target, perhaps the old man. Remembering that the old gun had died fighting in the base, his life would like he was somewhere in the base. Lu Sheng gazed towards the center of base 1399, where he could sense any terrifying aura. Uneven made his heart quiver. Perhaps the old man was among them. Base 1355 was vast, teeming powerful martial arts. But for now, Lu Sheng is still too weak, and he has a long way to go. Suddenly he felt a heartache. His conscious blurred as his body oscillated between extreme cold and heat. He realized the two Grandmaster will within him must have been infecting. He immediately employed the Christian meditation technique and entered the spiritual world. There, for parts of his human-shaped spirit sitting there were also two vortexes, one made of ice and one made of flames. Clearly, they were incompatible with each other. And not handled properly, Lu Sheng may be in danger. He tried to sever these two life forms, but they had no avail. And his human-shaped spirit split open, absorbing both Grandmaster's wills. After the absorption, the human-shaped spirit was a transformation, leaving Lu Sheng to shock. This was the same form of spirit recorded in the meditation technique. He breathed a sigh of relief. Thankful his spirit would absorb the Grandmaster's will. He pondered if he could continue to strengthen his spirit. How many Grandmaster wills could he absorb? A vast ambition. A vast ambition arose in Lu Sheng's heart. Recalling his own perfect martial path, he suddenly felt a sense of clarity. Perhaps he could make his own Grandmaster will into the ultimate will, forge, and combine other powerful Grandmaster wills, progressing step by step to achieve the ultimate will. Lu Sheng continued his training in the dream realm until morning. When he stepped out, Lin Zhe was already waiting for him, looking at Lu Sheng, his eyes filled with fervor and admiration. He told Lu Sheng that news of him had spread among the seniors, and that the seniors had petitioned to add Lu Sheng's name to the list of senior students' rankings. Lu Sheng simply shook his head and smiled. He remembered Lin Zhe's bravery during the welcoming ceremony, standing by his side, which had improved Lu Sheng's already favorable impression of him. Noticing Lu Sheng's disinterest in the topic, Lin Zhe quickly changed the subject. Today was the day to choose their major in melee weapons, followed by class division based on the weapons. Lin Zhe asked Lu Sheng what melee weapon he would choose to specialize in. Lu Sheng paused, then said he would probably choose the spear. Lin Zhe, thrilled, shared that his first choice was also the spear, claiming swords and other weapons felt too light, whereas the spear felt more powerful and manly. Lu Sheng patted Lin Zhe on the shoulder, happy that he had made a decision, but followed up saying that they might not get to see each other often in the future. As Lu Sheng walked ahead, Lin Zhe pondered his words for a moment and hurried after him, asking why. They soon arrived at their classroom. When Lu Sheng and Lin Zhe entered, the once noisy classroom fell into a sudden silence, with all eyes on Lu Sheng. For most of them, Lu Sheng was no longer just a freshman, but became a nightmarish presence. This also includes Huodong. Ever since that day, Huodong had been plagued with the same nightmare, where he was trapped in a water tank, unable to climb out as the water level slowly increased, causing him to wake up in shock and drenched in sweat all the time. He wondered if being a top martial scholar was always this terrifying, but quickly shook his head. It wasn't the title that was terrifying, it was Lu Sheng himself. The class bell rang, and a long-haired blonde woman in glasses and high heels walked in. She was the main professor for the Beast Studies course for freshmen. She started by informing the students that they probably already knew about the selection of melee weapon specialties happening today. However, some might wonder why they need to learn melee weapons and martial arts, instead of using well-established firearms and technologies. To answer that question, she played a video on the screen showing early human armies battling beasts. These were the best soldiers from different countries, and were fully armed. But whether that's firearms, cannons, rockets, tanks, or the most advanced fighter jets, and even the most powerful nuclear weapons, were ineffective against the beasts. Several students stood up, asking why this was the case. They had always been taught that firearms were ineffective against beasts, but never understood why. Lu Sheng answered in his mind, because of the rules. The professor echoed his thoughts, saying it was because of the rules. Humanity has been fighting these beasts for over 300 years, she continued, and the search for their origins and weakness has never ceased. Though the answer remained elusive, one thing was certain. These bizarre creatures hailed from another world. Speaking deliberately, she mentioned that it was said that humans did not choose the martial arts, but rather, it was the martial arts that chose them. A female student posed a question. If the firearms were affected by so-called rules of this other world, wouldn't these creatures also be influenced by the rules when entering their world? The professor commended the student for asking a great question, but regretfully admitted she didn't have a real answer for her, shaking her head, suggesting perhaps the answer had already lay right before them, or maybe the human race just refused to admit it. This contradictory statement puzzled many students. At this juncture, Lu Sheng spoke up, theorizing that these creatures had already been altered by their own world's rules. In their original form, Lu Sheng paused, and they were even more powerful. Then followed up saying they were much more powerful in their original form. The professor looked at Lu Sheng in surprise and nodded in agreement, adjusting her glasses. She hadn't expected a student to reach the same theory as her. A stunned silence fell over the classroom. Murmurs of disbelief rose and cries of, "That's impossible and it's unfair," echoed. The professor sighed softly, her voice tinged with an indescribable emotion, telling the students that the world they live in was inherently unfair, and this was the lesson she intended to impart today. As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, the professor gathered her things and headed for the door. The classroom remained quiet for a long time. These young and freshman students were deeply impacted by the discussion, struggling to find peace. After several minutes, Lindsay these creatures reached weak and already versions of their original form. What future do humanity have if they gain full strength? He voiced concerns to Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng didn't answer. He knew that humanity was indeed doomed in 10,000 years. Patting Lindsay on the back, he stood up. Lu Sheng, who had access to the Fire Seed Resources Bank, imparted the wisdom and knowledge of 10,000 years. He knew more than anyone, yet he still couldn't solve the beast's problems. He currently lives in martial year 300, still the beginning of this long and vast history. Even after all this time, all the hard work he had put in, he had yet to alter the future. The future seemed bleak, and he knew it was pointless to keep worrying. All he could do was to continually make himself stronger and hone his martial arts, step by step, in search of hope. Outside the classroom, every student received a form. They had 3 days to choose a melee weapon and submit their choice for classroom allocation. After filling out the form, Lu Sheng told Lin Zhe it was time to head over to the spear classroom. Recovering from his brief confusion, Lin Zhe followed Lu Sheng excitedly. The students erupted in noise upon hearing Lu Sheng's choice. Many students immediately chose other melee weapons, and several students who had initially chosen spears hastily changed their choice. Outside the spear classroom, Lin Zhe and Lu Sheng could intermittently hear shouts and the clashing of weapons. Upon entering, they found everyone wielding long spears. When Lu Sheng walked in, some senior students recognized him, surprised to see he had chosen the spear as his melee weapon. Others, unfamiliar with Lu Sheng, asked who is this guy. People soon began sharing recent tales of Lu Sheng. Whispers filled the room as a muscular female instructor, clad in a tank top, sharing her knowledge. With the ring of the bell signaling the end of class, she gave students the option to leave or stay for further practice. Suddenly, she turned her gaze towards Lu Sheng and Lin Zhe, beckoning them to step forward. The instructor Athena had a long scar over one eye and a muscular physique showcasing her strength. Introducing herself, she explained she taught spear techniques to first-year through third-year students. Holding her spear upright, she focused on Lu Sheng and Lin Zhe, curious to assess their abilities. Lu Sheng had already sensed that Athena was a peak 6th-level martial artist. Athena, intrigued by Lu Sheng, wondered if he was the much-talked-about new student. Without a word, Athena threw her spear towards Lu Sheng, who caught it single-handedly and skillfully spun it in his hand. His posture, firm and upright, seemed to merge with the spear. Seeing this, Athena nodded in approval. With a calm expression, Lu Sheng warned Athena to be careful. Athena, slightly shocked by getting warned by a freshman, picked up another spear and massaged her neck. Despite not being a grandmaster, she had practiced the spear techniques for decades and was confident in facing even grandmaster opponents. Just as Athena was about to laugh off Lu Sheng's warning, a flash of blue light caught her eye. Her pupils contracted sharply as she felt a sensation of death, the same feeling of Genos' first encounter with Saitama.
無用です。以上です。